Good morning. Welcome to Ripon Community Church. My name is Aaron. I'm one of the pastors on staff here. Happy Father's Day to all our fathers in the room. Before we dive into the sermon, I thought we'd have some Father's Day fun. And I thought before I could come and speak on Father's Day, I had to get to know what it means to be a father from a bunch of fathers. So we're going to hear some advice from fathers. And one of the first things I learned from them is that fathers like to have a cold drink in their hand, like a soda. So we're going to pass out Cokes and Diet Cokes to all of the fathers in the room. And there's can koozies to keep your hand nice and warm at the same time. So we're going to watch some advice from RCC fathers, and then the hosts are going to come down and pass out a Coke or a Diet Coke. If you're a father, let them know which one you'd like.
One of the funniest times in my life was because I had a slight anger issue when I was younger. And my oldest daughter had a tendency to be late. And one morning she would just caught me on the wrong day, and I let a little punch out like that into the air. And I caught the windshield. And the windshield. And the look on my kids' faces, they knew not to mess with Dad and be late anymore. Yeah, it was just a $200 lesson.
We're sitting in the car and we brought Cry one day, the preschool brought Cry, and he's like, "Do you want a hot dog?" She said, "No, I want a brat." I was like, "Never really had that, but okay, we can try it." So I give her one, she tries it. "Dad, I love brats. I love them." It's like, "That's good, you're my daughter then." I do.
I was Skyping with my parents. I had one on each knee on my lap. Natalie hiccuped on this knee, and Lauren kind of acted surprised by it and actually flipped out of my arms as I was trying to get Natalie. And all the while, my parents were on Skype on the computer in front of me, a complete look of horror on their face. They couldn't do anything about it. And I kind of got girls flying all different ways off of me. I just said, "I gotta go."
My son, he was in a walker, he couldn't yet walk, and kind of took a spill. Took a spill down the open door, and everything checked out, but kind of felt bad about that. No, Mom didn't hear about that one for a while.
Just no stitches.
Yeah, it was fine. It was fine.
So we're going to actually hear a little bit more from them later on in the sermon. But before we even sat down and had a conversation, they showed me all the dad dance moves. Now, you know what I'm talking about? If you don't, check them out right here.
"Hey son, how are those chores going? Don't get the flowers, you need to water those!" "Hey son, don't do that, that's a no-no. And this is a nay-nay." Oh. "Young man, watch your mouth. And watch me whip. Now I've seen it." I'm done. I was just yeet. "Man, look at your dad. And look at my dad." "Hey son, how the..."
So maybe not that part, but anyways, I joked with my wife actually that this would be the perfect time for us to be we're expecting, but we're not. We're not planning on having kids for a long time. We're very happy without children. But anyways... But anyways, happy Father's Day. I hope that it's a fun service for you guys. I think it's going to be a great service to be at as this service is our kickoff of our series, Serious Hope. And I think the series is going to be really helpful to help people really find hope that they can base their lives on. We as a staff here at RCC, or I'm sure you have as well, you've heard countless times of people placing hope in things that you probably are that's not going to live up to the hope that they're expecting. Maybe it's their new job. They're expecting their new job to be something that they can base all their hope in. Or their new house, or new car, or new diet, or new method to make money, new treatment, a new motivation. Yet even while we hear these things that seem kind of funny for us to have someone put all their hope into, I think we still get sucked into them. I still get sucked into them. So this summer, we are going to be going through the book of Hebrews, which is actually a letter that talks about the hope we can actually base our lives on. So this week, we're starting with Hebrews chapter 1 and chapter 2. So before we dive in any further, I'm going to actually read the two passages that we're going to work from today, and then I'm going to pray and ask God to help us find serious hope. So the first passage is Hebrews 1, verse 3. It says, "The Son radiates God's own glory and expresses the very character of God, and he sustains everything by the mighty power of his command." And then the second passage is Hebrews 2:16. It says, "We also know that the Son did not come to help angels. He came to help the descendants of Abraham," or us. "Therefore, it was necessary for him to be made in every respect like us, as brothers and sisters, so that he could be our merciful and faithful high priest before God. Then he could offer a sacrifice that would take away the sins of the people, since he himself has gone through suffering and testing. He is able to help us when we are being tested." Would you guys bow your heads with me and pray? Hey God, thank you for giving us a book where we can learn that we can place some serious hope in you. I pray that that's something we leave with today and something we leave with after this summer, knowing that we can place and base our hope on you. In your name we pray, amen. So a while back, I was getting to a spot where I was about to propose to my now wife. And as part of a proposal is you have to save up for a ring. I'm sure many of you know this. You're saving up the dollars, counting every penny, every cent, so that you have enough money to get a really good ring. Now, I'm saving, and I'm thinking, all right, I got the ring figured out. Now, where should I do the proposal? And my wife at the time was in Costa Rica, so I'm like, Costa Rica, perfect spot. I'll meet her in Costa Rica. We'll do it on the beach. It's going to be great. So I'm excited about this. But then I started thinking, I'm like, Costa Rica. I'm going to fly in. I'm going to have to go through customs. We're going to do all this public transportation. We're staying in a hostel. You know, like, I don't want that ring to get stolen or, like, taken or anything, so I'm getting nervous. I'm like, do I even bring the ring? I call her mom, and I'm like, should I bring the ring? She's like, yes. I'm like, okay, yeah, all right, well, I'll bring the ring. I got the ring, like, all right. But I'm getting stressed. But anyways, I start making the plans, and we have everything lined up. What we needed to do is, once I got to the airport, we would get on one bus, which would take us to a town where we'd find another bus station to get on like an 8-hour bus ride to Tamarindo Beach. We had it all figured out. I'm excited about it. I have the plans. I have the reservations. Well, I get to the airport. We get on the first bus. Things are great. We start walking around the city looking for the next bus station. We're walking. Can't find it. Now, my wife and I, we both speak Spanish, and we're asking people, like, is there a bus station around here? And everyone's like, yeah, just keep walking. Just keep going straight. Like, you're on your way. Well, we're walking, and we're still not seeing it. So we're getting really nervous because it's getting close to the time of the takeoff for the bus. So I ask a taxi. He's like, yeah, that bus broke down yesterday. It's not available. And I'm thinking, is it? And he goes, but I can take you to another bus station that's like 40 minutes away, and maybe there could be another bus to take you to Tamarindo. And I'm like, what do I do here? What do I do? I had all these plans. I'm like, all right, take us. So we get to this bus station, we hop on a bus, and it takes us to a city that's like halfway to Tamarindo. And I'm just hoping that maybe that bus station's open. Well, we get there, the bus station's closed, it's dark out, I have no idea what city we're in, we're still about 2 or 3 hours away from where our destination. I'm like, what do we do here? And it's not like in a friendly place, we're all nervous, and we're like, and then the whole time I'm like, this ring is in my pocket. So I'm nervous. I finally get to a spot where I go to a taxi. I'm like, can you take us to Tamarindo Beach? And he does. Now, things work out great. She says yes. Things turn out to be very happy. But in this story, I got in a situation where I still had to make choices that I thought were best for us and lead us. Yet, there was a lot of trust from God because my ability to speak Spanish, my ability to fix a situation with our finances, my understanding of a city and how things worked, they weren't doing much for me at that time. They weren't doing much for me. Have you ever gotten in a situation like that where you put your hope in something or planned on getting through using your skill set, and then it failed you? You just couldn't get everything you were hoping for. Maybe it was your ability, or your ability to plan. You're expecting that to get you the hope that you're putting everything into. or your own physical ability. You're expecting your own physical ability will get you everything you need. Your ability to fix things, your finances, your tough stuff like your vehicles, your health, your family. All these things, they're great and all, but they all will probably fail you at some point, which is so tough to let sink in for us. Now, would anybody describe themselves as a fixer? Like they like to just fix situations. It doesn't matter what it is. Yeah, I'm definitely a fixer. I know there's a lot of dads that are fixers. And I think a lot of us try to fix the situations we're in. For me, like when a problem arises in our house, like a construction thing, I'm not calling a plumber. I'm not calling a contractor. I'm fixing it. I'm trying to do it myself. Or if there's a problem with a friendship or a relationship, I do what I have to do to fix it. If we're struggling to pay for something, I work more hours or I try to find a part-time job. If I'm not where I want to be, I work at it. But what happens when you can't fix it? You can't repair a relationship because honestly, the other person doesn't. They don't want it. Or the time you can't fix that thing because you honestly have no idea how to. The time the bills have added up and you're out of time and you're out of money. Or maybe when you or a family member is sick and you can't do anything about it. Where do you place your hope in then? Where do you place your hope in then? There's a story in Jesus' time where someone experienced this level of hopelessness, but they saw an opportunity to gain serious hope with Jesus. I think the story is so rich, actually, that we're going to read it directly out of the Bible. So if you want, there's some Bibles in front of the seats. Grab it out. It's on page 605. It's Mark 9 is what we're going through. If you don't want to pull a Bible out, no worries. You can just listen to my beautiful voice or watch the screen up here. But we're going to go right through the story in Mark 9, verse 14 is where we're starting. Again, page 605. But you need to know a little background before we dive into it. A little background on the story is Jesus was just away with a few of his disciples or followers. And they were up on a mountain experiencing this thing, but they're coming back down to rejoin with everybody. The other disciples, the people that have been following Jesus around, just looking to see what he'll do next. And Jesus returns to them is where it starts. So it says in verse 14, it says, when they returned to the other disciples, they saw a large crowd surrounding them. And some teachers of religious law were arguing with them. When the crowd saw Jesus, they were overwhelmed with awe, and they ran to greet him. What is all this arguing about? Jesus asked. Now, I'm going to pause it for a second. This sounds a lot like parenting to me. Like, you leave, you have a babysitter, and you come back and everyone's arguing, everyone's excited to see the parents, but you're like, what is going on? What is all this arguing? So props to you dads and parents out there that really do deal with these situations. It continues though, in 17 it says, one of the men in the crowd spoke up and said, Teacher, I brought my son so you could heal him. He is possessed by an evil spirit that won't let him talk. And whenever the spirit seizes him, it throws him violently to the ground. Then he foams at the mouth and grinds his teeth and becomes rigid. So I asked your disciples to cast out the evil spirit, but they couldn't do it. Jesus said to them, You faithless people, how long must I be with you? How long must I put up with you? Bring the boy to me. That's Jesus getting super angry about the situation. You faithless people, how long must I deal with you? How long must you constantly beg for me to deal with these situations? Yet he starts to see that it's something he needs to handle. He says, bring the boy to me. Now, Jesus responds, he says, how long has this been happening to the father? And the father responds, since he was a little boy. The spirit often throws him into the fire or into water, trying to kill him. Have mercy on us and help us if you can, the father says to Jesus. I want to pause there. Have you been in a position like this before, like the father? Someone you love is hurting, and you have tried everything you can to do to fix the situation for them, but it hasn't gotten any better. You have a child, a friend, a spouse, or family member who's dealing with something, and you've tried everything to take it away. You wish you could even just put it on yourself. You're looking for serious hope. I think that's what the father is experiencing in this story. I imagine this father is exhausted of his son going into fire and water all the time. Because imagine, like, walking around Ripon right now, if you go to, like, Canoes, you go to Jay's, you go to Mugs, there's, like, fire, but it's, like, in a conventional oven. Back then, if you were cooking, it was on a fire. If you were heating, it was a fire. If you had water, there wasn't really, like, great plumbing. It was basins and cisterns and being next to a port. So water and fire is everywhere. This father has experienced this level of hopelessness all the time. So he responds, he says, "Have mercy on us and help us if you can." In verse 23, it says, "What do you mean if I can?" Jesus asked. "Anything is possible if a person believes." The father instantly cried out, "I do believe, but help me overcome my unbelief." Wait, what? I do believe, but help me overcome my unbelief. That's an interesting statement. Yet imagine, dads, if I asked you today, or if Jesus asked you today, do you believe in me? I think a lot of you would say, yeah, I do. But then he asked, have you ever doubted my ways? Have you ever doubted me? Have you ever doubted a situation you were in? That's me too. The Father wants to believe Jesus is someone reliable, yet he is doubting. It continues, though, and finishes. It says, when Jesus saw the crowd of onlookers was growing, he rebuked the spirit. "Listen, you spirit that makes this boy unable to hear and speak," he said, "I command you to come out of this child and never enter him again." And it happens. Jesus heals this child. Now, this is a great story where we can see that Jesus literally heals and fixes a situation. Some of you have maybe experienced that. You've experienced Jesus literally fixing and healing a situation of hopelessness in your life. Maybe it was an illness, a marriage issue, a relationship problem, a financial situation, an understanding of something, an addiction. That's awesome if you've experienced that. It's some of us maybe are still waiting for something and doubting, which brings us back to our Hebrews verse. Hebrews 2:16, it says, "We also know that the Son did not come to help angels. He came to help the descendants of Abraham," which is us. "Therefore, it was necessary for him to be made in every respect like us, his brothers and sisters, so that he could be our merciful and faithful high priest before God. Then he could offer a sacrifice that would take away the sins of the people. Since he himself has gone through suffering and testing, he is able to help us when we are being tested." The Son of God, Jesus, came to help us, came to fix our mistakes, take our consequences, and to help us when we're being tested, to help us when we're suffering or when others are suffering around us. Our hope should be placed in him. Still today, though, we experience these times of hurt and times where we are either personally suffering or someone we love is suffering, and there's simply no improvement, and maybe even not a lot of hope. Many of the fathers I met with, they talked about this. They dealt with a situation where they felt they were in a spot that needed improvement, but they were pretty hopeless. Let's see what they have to say.
I think everyone's had, the sicknesses with the kids and, the little bumps and bruises. Those are tough to get through some days.
Hardest moment for me, Joelle was 4 years old, and I had a job where on Monday morning I left, and I came home Thursday night, sometimes Friday morning, and one Monday morning, she's got both arms locked around my shin. I've got a suitcase in the hand, and I'm trying to open the back door because I gotta go. And she's like, "Don't go, Daddy, don't go, Daddy." And she's hanging on so tight. There is nothing more gut-wrenching. And it made me realize that my career wasn't as important as my family.
Going through our adoption in Kenya, and Jess and our 3 biological sons had to leave 5 days before Christmas, and we had to bring them to the airport. And seeing them go was tough. But when they left, and I seen him walk away, and we couldn't go any further in the airport. I didn't know if it was going to be 6 weeks or 6 months. That was really hard.
The hardest thing I think that today that I've had to deal with kids, or as a dad, was just navigating the loss of a parent for the older ones. You know, I mean, it's one of those things where it's not just what happened. The worst part is just not knowing how it's going to affect them. You know, how like when they're 6 and 4 years old, how it's affecting them now. How do they even understand it? And then in the future, I mean, their emotions about it, just like not knowing, like, where are you with this? Like, anytime you have unknown when it's dealing with your kids or their emotions, it's just gut-wrenching as a dad.
As a dad, parent, friend, spouse, what can you do to provide hope for a situation that's out of your control? Something that isn't fixable by your ability or the snap of a finger. Someone talked about a job situation or a loss of a parent or a separation from your family or illness. I think there are some things we can pull out of the story from the Father and the Son and from our Hebrews verses to help us find hope in all these situations. The first one is show up. The Son and the Father wouldn't have experienced what they did if they didn't get to Jesus. So if you're dealing with something, you need to get to Jesus. If you need hope, you need to get to Jesus. And what that means and what that looks like is you need to simply show up and start reaching out to God. Are you showing up to learn His ways? Are you showing up to converse with Him through prayer? Are you showing up by giving Him opportunities to move in your life? It doesn't mean stop doing things on your own, but it means following through and checking to see if you are giving God an opportunity to move in your life. There's a quote from an old theologian that I think applies really well to this. It's pray as if everything depends on God. Work as if everything depends on you. Again, it's pray as if everything depends on God. Work as if everything depends on you. What that means is plead and pray to God to have Him move in your life, but act on what you think is best or what God's prompting you to do. So again, the first one is show up. Number two is, if you find yourself in a spot where you need serious hope, be honest with God. Be honest with God and with yourself. Recently, my wife and I, we got into whitewater kayaking, and it all started with going to the Dells of Eau Claire in Wausau. It looks like this. It looks pretty awesome. There's all these like waterfalls, rock formations. It's a really cool spot. And I saw this, and I'm like, we got to kayak this. This looks intense. This looks like a rush. Let's do it. So we buy our stuff. We get like the gear, and we're learning. We're in the process of learning maybe how to eventually do that. But we're scouting out different rivers recently, and this is one of the rivers we checked out, and I'm like, oh, that's a little intimidating once you get like right next to it. Like kind of scary, kind of like big, but like my wife like would ask me, and she'd be like, does this make you nervous? I'm like, nah. Maybe a little. I think, though, that's like the Father in the story. In our story, the Father responded, I believe, but help me with my unbelief. Many of us believe in Jesus, but do you believe that God does know what's best for you? Do you believe that God should lead your life? Your parenting decisions, your choices, your decisions that you make, your finances, your relationships. Do you believe that God should lead those as well? Be honest in those situations to both yourself and God, so God knows where you're struggling to give Him full hope. And so you know personally where you need to make a change maybe to allow God to lead in those areas. So again, be honest. Our third point and last point is know the amount of hope you can actually gain through Jesus. Hebrews 1:3, the first verse I read, it says, the Son radiates God's own glory and expresses the very character of God, and He sustains everything by the mighty power of His command. The mighty power of His command sustains everything. God is God, which means He is the overseer of everything. He sustains everything. And in our Hebrews 2 passage, we see words like merciful, faithful, helpful. When you place your hope in God, you have a hope for something not only for today, but for the future or forever. Hebrews 2:14, it says, because God's children are human beings made of flesh and blood, the Son also became flesh and blood. For only as a human being could he die, and only by dying could he break the power of the devil, who had the power of death. Only in this way could he set free all who have lived their lives as slaves to the fear of dying. We don't have to be slaves to the fear of death. We have something hopeful to look forward to. So again, to gain serious hope, you need to show up, to be honest in a situation, and remind yourself of the serious amount of hope you have when you place it in Jesus. As I'm getting close to wrapping up, I think it's important to touch on two things because I think there's these feelings that still happen even when we're trying to have serious hope. Some of us still experience things where we are like, why hasn't my problem gone away? God, why haven't you healed me? God, why am I dealing with this? Have I done something wrong? Why haven't you given me what I want? You experience these things even when you're showing up, being honest, and reminding yourself of the hope you do have in Jesus. And it brings us this great sense of sadness and doubt. In those times, it's important to consider that maybe the answer, the remedy we're looking for, isn't what God thinks is best for us. Maybe we are looking for the wrong solution. Maybe the fix or the thing we should be desiring is something different than what we personally want. And we maybe just need to adjust our thinking. For example, maybe you're single right now. You're single and you're sad and you don't have someone. But maybe that's what's best for you. A time of singleness, a time to work on yourself, a time to find out what you actually want for a significant other. I've been there. I know what that's like. Maybe you're struggling with an illness or an injury that is requiring you to miss out on things. But maybe it's requiring you to spend more time with God because you have to sit and rest and slow down. Maybe someone you love is struggling and you want to do anything you can to help them. It's so tough when you're dealing with that. But maybe your hope for them is reminding them of the hope that they can have in Jesus for the future. Or lastly, maybe you're struggling with a job you just can't stand it, yet it's humbling you and it's making you learn how to deal with different types of leadership. So if you're hopeless in a situation and are still waiting for an answer on why, maybe you need to adjust your thinking. Last thing is if we are dealing with something that is hurtful or that we feel is hopeless, I think the important part is to remember that God is mourning and crying right there with us. Jesus walked a walk of suffering and death. God saw his Son walk a walk of suffering and death. Those are two things we can relate to God with. We can relate to God whether our children or a significant other is dealing with suffering or we are personally dealing with it. God has experienced both of those. He doesn't want to see us unhappy or be suffering, and he knows how bad it sucks. But sometimes we go through tough times because it's just part of human life. In order for us to be humans and not robots that have every move computed for us, God can't come in and just fix everything for us every time we deal with something bad. So in our suffering, I think it's important to remember God is just as sad and is mourning right there with us. So as I wrap up today, I have a challenge for you, or two challenges for you. The first one is read Hebrews this summer. Read Hebrews. We're going to go chapter by chapter throughout the summer, and we started with chapter 1 and 2, so this is a 2-for-1. But read Hebrews and stick with us, because I know if you read it, you will find that you can have some serious hope in Jesus. The second is, I want you to think about the father in the story. The father in the story that we just talked about. And think about what thing you need to do to be like that father. Are you one that simply needs to believe in Jesus and start showing up to hear his teachings? Do you need to be honest with Jesus or be honest with God and yourself about how much hope and belief you actually placed in him? Have you allowed him to lead in your finances, your family life, your choices, your relationships, where you spend your time? Or lastly, do you need to seek teaching and be reminded of the full, serious hope you can actually have in Jesus? a hope for today and for the future. Whatever one you are, I'm going to ask God to remind me of which one I need to work on. Remind me of that I can have hope in Him. And if you want that too, and be reminded of the challenge of what thing you need to do to be like the Father, you can bow your heads with me. Hey God, thank you for giving us stories and providing us with Scripture where we can have hope. I pray that as we go through this series that we do find serious hope and know that we can put hope in you. I pray that you help us connect with the Father and figure out what we need to do to be like the Father in the story, whether it's being honest or showing up or just trusting that you are someone we can place serious hope in. So I pray that you challenge us. You challenge us to and remind us that we do have serious hope in you. Help us take that next step. In your name we pray. Amen.